All right, and welcome to Touching Bases podcast. Today we have a little bit different setup. We have somebody else on the channel. It's not just my ugly mug talking to you guys. We're gonna be talking a little bit ball. You guys probably know of him if you know of this channel. My man Jim Riley is going to be joining us, and I must bring him in now. Jimmy
Chad,
James,
how you doing, man? How's it going?
I'm doing good. It's good to see you. Just gonna be going over some stuff. Gonna touch on a few topics because we both have limited time here. But he's been gracious enough to bless me with his presence. And the first thing I wanted to talk about and kind of go over is a team that's out. It's no longer a part of the playoff equation, and a little bit of a disappointment. And it's your team. And I think there's a huge following for the Toronto Blue Jays. But I feel like there is some decisions that were made that maybe gave an opportunity to make the playoffs. Hindsight's 2020, but I wanted to get kind of your take on it and on how the season went for them.
Well, it was multiple elements that all failed at the same time. They dealt with injuries. Bo Bichette spent a ton of time hurt. They dealt with some pitching injuries. They dealt with some bullpen issues. Romano hasn't pitched. Even when Romano was out there, he wasn't that good. But the bullpen has not been solid. The rotation went through some issues. Kevin Gausman was good, not great. They need him to be great. The bats, George Springer has regressed. David Schneider's not Babe Ruth. You just have had too many issues. Alejandro Kirk is, I'm not, I'll just put it this way. I'm not a Kirk guy anymore. I think he's fine. I think he's fine if he is sharing time exclusively as the main guy. I'm not a big Kirk guy. So there were
with who they have left though. I mean, who would you rather see? Who would be his platoon?
Well, at this point, you're just going through the motions. It's something that needs to be addressed in the offseason. They need to grab a good, legitimate catcher for him to split time with. I don't want Kirk out there, drastically more than another guy. And I don't know if it's somebody. I mean, look, Elias Diaz may not be that expensive. And I think the Blue Jays are going to have to be frugal with their money. And Diaz could be somebody they could get at a decent rate. And I believe what he can do defensively and what he can do with the bat, I think that could be a nice addition. They're going to have to be smart with their money. But to your question, so many things went wrong everywhere. Literally, there's really just been a couple of elements that have gone right. Vladdy's had a great year, But this team almost feels like it was built for Vladdy to be a 50-homer guy because they went so defensive focused, and then they had to be very careful with their money with the free agents they were signing. And he's not a 50-homer guy. He's just not. He's a 30-homer guy that can hit 300, and that's great. Like, that should be championed and not at all, picked apart. But he's had a great season, and there have been some young guys that have come up and looked really good. Players like Spencer Horwitz, Addison Barger's had some time. Jimenez has had some time. If anything, the Toronto Blue Jays have seen what life would be like without Bo Bichette, and it's okay. And honestly, it's okay. Jimenez as my shortstop, I'm good with that because Jays fans may think, well, let's trade Bo Bichette and then we can make a run at Willy Adames. I don't think the Blue Jays are going to have the money to do that.
That's a lot.
Yes, they are going to have to pay Vladdy a crazy amount of money next year. They are, I think, going to, if they keep their payroll where it is this year, that would be a good thing. That means that, and that, that is with Vladdy. Vladdy's probably going to make another $10 million next year. So they're gonna have some tough decisions to make, but so many different elements all fell apart all at the right time for this year to just completely go south on them.
And that was the thing I was kind of curious about as far as like Bo Bichette. Of course, and this is like also like a Mariners thing. Like the fans, the organization, they get attached to a specific player that
Yeah.
is either a sub face or the face of the franchise,
Mm-hmm.
and they are just not performing or they're hurt all the time. It's like they get stuck on this idea of this player needs to do better because we're paying him to do better, but that's not always how it works. And then I look at the Blue Jays, and I think they did the smart route. Of course, they made trades for players that were on their last season. They're going to be free agents. Get them off the books, get something in return, hang on to those guys. With the Mariners, they did a couple trades with Jimmy and also Turner. It makes sense given where they were in the season. But going into the offseason, IKF, like around the time he was traded, he was batting 292. Like he was offensively really good. And I think if they had a bit of a better scope in the future as far as going to the playoffs, like actually having a run, they probably would have held on to him. At least I think that would have been a good idea. And then June 8th, I think, was when Horwitz got called up. And
which took forever.
It was a what if, but what if IKF and Horwitz were in the middle of the infield the whole season, and they were batting 292, 274. You know, I know it's a 1-year deal, but I mean, a 115 OPS plus, it's pretty good. He had a 3.5 WAR, and Clement and Horwitz shared of 8.4 WAR with him. Like. Clement at third, like that seemed like a solid infield with some good batting. And I mean, again, for Blue Jays fans, for you, it's 2020 hindsight. But if they made those moves, do you think they had a chance at the playoffs? And I understand the East is intense. I mean, we'll talk about the Orioles, but it was very challenging.
Something about this team just they need to, and they can't, and they haven't for a couple of years. They need to have 8, 9, 10, 11 game winning streak, or they need to have a 15 great game stretch where they win 13 games, and they don't do that. So there's something about whether it is the leadership on the management side or the leadership on the player side, the clubhouse. They just cannot lock that in, because if you could get hot and get on a run, Seattle had one of those. I mean, Houston's had one of those. All of these teams that are going to be in the postseason have had one of those. Toronto did not. Toronto has swept I believe it's 3 teams this year. They swept the Angels twice. So, and I think they swept the White Sox. I think those are the only sweeps. The Blue
Jays,
those are the 2
teams you expect to sweep.
Right. So this team just didn't get hot, and you need to get into some of those, and if you're not going to do that, then you just have to play consistent baseball where you are constantly winning 2 out of 3. But they don't have the consistency to do that. They, from very early on, they had a tough time scoring runs, and this was at a time when everybody in the fan base was clamoring for the team to call up Spencer Horwitz, and they wouldn't do it. They could not figure out how to get Spencer Horwitz up to the big league club, which was mind-numbing. You had a
they weren't the only ones to do that, though.
Well, and Daniel Vogelback was the reason why Spencer Horwitz wasn't there. So the decision making on the player personnel side of things has sort of put them at a disadvantage. The in the beginning of the year, David Schneider was playing really good baseball for the first month or so, but they kept taking him in and out of the lineup. So one of the hottest bats at the beginning of the year, they weren't giving him everyday run. I did a video on it. There was something about like the first 3 weeks of the season, he only played half the games, and he was their best hitter. There's a lot of challenges. I think Schneider is challenged at this. I think some of the other front office people at personnel decisions, putting people in position to succeed, and it sets them back. They're the little decisions that then can stop you from excelling and succeeding. And they're great at making poor decisions, unfortunately.
And I think that's also a league thing this year, though. as far as the call-ups go? Because I mean, we saw that with Jackson Holiday. Everybody was debating, oh, is it
Well, there was
contract
reason.
manipulation?
So the Jackson Holiday thing, the Orioles said, we want him to go down. We want him to face left-handed pitching more, and I think they wanted more time at second base. They had a reason. They called him up, and he was terrible. So
Yeah.
the way the whole Jackson Holiday thing has played out,
That made sense, though, I guess.
he was terrible when they called him up, and then they sent him down. He was down forever. They finally call him back up, and he's still terrible. He's not even playing right now, and they haven't sent him back down. They sent Eloy Jimenez DFA'd or optioned. And Jackson's still on the team because they don't want to waste an option at this point, because that's what it would be doing. You kind of need to leave him on the roster, and so you can save that option for next year if you need it. So I mean, there are definitely examples from team to team.
I would say Paul Skeens.
Paul Skeens, he started a month later, right?
Yeah.
In the end, here's the thing: if Paul Skeens had started a month earlier, he's probably done now. Like, he's still pitching this last month of the season. He's still pitching deep in September. I think if he starts the year at the big league level, maybe he's still not pitching at this point. But to your point, it's true. But here's the thing: Pittsburgh's not winning anything. The Toronto
they're not.
Right, so it makes sense for them to manipulate the service time. Sorry, Paul, but the Toronto Blue Jays are trying to win a World Series this year. That's got to be the goal when you throw your first pitch back at the end of March, and you are getting things going. If you're the Toronto Blue Jays, you are thinking, our goal is to make a World Series run. And if you have guys like Spencer Horowitz or Addison Barger or anybody who's down at the minor league level, if they're tearing it up and you're struggling, service time be damned, because if you're manipulating service time, you're thinking about 3, 4, 5 years down the road, 6 years down the road.
Arbitration, all that extension.
Yeah. When you're the Toronto Blue Jays and you're thinking about, this is the year to win the World Series and we only have 2 more years of Bo and Vladdy, you get those guys up. There are instances where it makes sense to, and I hate it from a player perspective, but from a business decision perspective, from a front office perspective, it makes sense to wait a month, let him pitch down in the minors, let him get a couple of weeks, and then let's call him up. I mean, really what needs to happen is that rule needs to be, like, they need to change that rule. I don't know if they ever will, but they need to adjust that to where if you're called up, you get a year of service time. Regardless of when you're called up, your service time starts and you get credit for that whole year, even if you're called up halfway through the year. Maybe the only exception would be if you're a September call up, then that doesn't count. But if you are called up anytime from day one to
at least,
the last day of August,
the trade deadline or the All-Star break.
Yeah, exactly. You get a full year of service time no matter when you're called up, because then teams wouldn't be able to play that game the first month of the season.
And just for reference, I mean, what you were mentioning as far as Schneider, just for numbers perspective, because I'm kind of a numbers guy. So through March and April, that was like his hottest time. He ended the 2-month stretch at a 262 batting average with a 351 OBP and slugging 462, which is not like all-star quality, but 262, that's pretty good.
For the rest of that team, for the rest of the team and the guys they were putting out there over him, it was a better option.
It made no sense. Although, and then of course, following that, he was in 218 at the end of June, at the end of July, 216. It was like
he cooled. He cooled big time.
But switching over to Vladdy, because I know we got to keep it going. Last thing on the Blue Jays, I saw a tweet, and there's been a couple of reports that he has openly said he wants to play third base next season if he's given the opportunity. I think that would be an awesome move for the Blue Jays, considering there are quite a few big bats for first base that are going on the free agents market.
Right.
Whether the money's there or not, if they are in that mindset of World Series now, we need to bring one to Canada.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
This sounds smart to me. Now, defensively, I don't know. I've never seen Vladdy play third, but
he's good.
If he's into it, and if they're about it, and they pick some big bat up, I'm not saying maybe Alonso, but I was thinking Walker.
Right.
What do you think?
No, that's what that possibility does. It gives them the versatility when it comes to free agency. They could go after Alonso. They could go after Walker. If they feel like Anthony Rizzo, who will most certainly be there's a club option there for him in New York, that will be declined. So Anthony Rizzo could be a free agent and could be a cheap deal. I'm not saying that's the move I want, but you have the opportunities to go out there and try to grab some bats. I just feel like the reason I bring up Anthony Rizzo is because it feels like a Blue Jays front office kind of move. It's going to be one of those things where Anthony Rizzo is still going to be a free agent. It's going to be February, and the Blue Jays haven't made a splash because Alonso went back to the Mets, and Walker went back to the Diamondbacks, and Soto went back to the Yankees, and the Jays haven't made a splash, and Rizzo's still there. Let's go get Rizzo. It's the Kevin Kiermaier moves. It just feels like this is what they're gonna. This is the way they're gonna go. But
yeah,
they have the ability to dance in that circle with the big names, and also if Vladdy, let's say the Blue Jays want to get in on the Alex Bregman sweepstakes, Vladdy could stay at first, and if Vladdy hears that, I'm going to stay at first, but it's because we're getting Alex Bregman, I'm okay with that.
I think you'd be okay.
Bregman's going to have a very interesting market. I've started looking at this. Obviously, we're at the end of September. Alex Bregman's market is not going to be that great. When you think about the teams that the players that are connected to the 2017 cheating situation, they've gone. Springer went to Canada. Correa went pretty damn close to Canada. Went to Minnesota. So you're not going to have, if you're Alex Bregman, the New York teams are not in play. I know the Mets were close to bringing in Correa, and you think, well, maybe there's a way to get around that. I still don't think there is.
Why don't you think the Yankees?
Because of the 2017 thing.
You think they would just avoid it altogether? Because I don't think they're going to re-sign Torres, and I think Jazz is going to second.
So if you have Jazz a second, then who is it? It's not Peraza. It's the other. It's the other. No, who am I? I'm getting the names mixed up. It's the guy that was coming up with Volpe. It's Cabrera or Peraza.
Yeah, it's one of those two, right?
I can't. I don't know why I can't think of the name. Can't think of.
They're both pretty utilitarian.
Yeah, but one of them hasn't been given a shot. I believe it's Pereira. Or not. I'm thinking of Everson Pereira. I got to get my notes up here. It's not Everson Pereira. It's not Oswaldo Cabrera. Who's the other guy?
That was Oswaldo Peraza.
Yes. That's it. Okay, that's it. So,
yeah.
Do you finally give him a chance? Do you get, because he looked good in the postseason last year in a very short bit of time, or 2 years ago. So do you finally give him a chance? Because yes, Gleyber Torres is a goner. They still have DJ under contract, which I'm sure nobody's excited about that. But I do believe Jazz would go back to second base. But as far as third base goes, I can't see Bregman. I think ultimately what it comes down to, and again, the Mets are different than the Yankees. The Mets were not directly impacted by that 17 club. So there is a because whenever Houston goes to New York, it's a mess, right? And they boo the shit out of them. Sorry, they boo the life.
You're fine. Don't worry. I'm not. There's no. This is not for kids. This is This is for the baseball fanatics. So yeah, you're good.
So they boom too much. I remember when Jose Bautista was a free agent. It got out that Jose Bautista was talking to the Orioles, and the Orioles front office was like, "We can't sign you because too much of our fan base hates you." And the same thing is going to go with the Yankees and Alex Bregman. I can't spend this money on you. These guys want to string me up as it is, and then I'm going to sign you. And if you go into a slump in April, I can't do it. They hate me as it is. So I think that now.
I think that affects a lot of teams. Like, I think Bleacher Report was completely wrong, saying the Mariners would be number one on it. The fan base
for Bregman,
hates.
heck no.
Yeah,
right. It is. Yeah. And this is a long way of getting back to Bregman's market's going to be very small. It is going to. Yeah. It's going to be Houston and maybe 2 or 3 other teams. outside of that, he is going to have a very difficult time finding not only a team, but a marketplace, because you can't just have one or two teams that want you. You've got to have 4 or 5.
And he's
Yankees,
slowly declining.
yes, he is. But here's the thing.
Like,
you know what's
to
interesting?
21, 270. He went down to 259, 22. In 23, he had 262. And then this year, he's 257, but he's been injured. So, I mean, you take that as what it is. But
he could end up back in Houston because he doesn't want to go through the embarrassment of still being on the market in February. And because he's asking for too much money.
Boris? Is he a Boris client?
Oh, I have that written down somewhere. I have all the Boris clients written down somewhere. Let me get that up.
I don't know if he is.
Yeah, there's a website. There's a website that has them, but they're wrong.
They are.
Boris. Yeah, it doesn't have all of the Boris clients. It has only a couple of them.
Because I was looking at this not too long ago.
I should know this off the top. I believe he is. Let me see. Yes, he's a Boris client. He's a Boris guy. So
I very much avoid Houston Astro content myself. So I don't know.
He's a Boris guy. So I got to scratch off the Yankees. I think the Yankees would look elsewhere for a third baseman. The Yankees might just grab Gio Urshela. So he'll be a free agent.
You don't think the Braves will want to keep him?
I think the Braves are going to have Austin Riley back, so they won't have a need for him. So you'll have we're gonna cross off Seattle. We're gonna cross off the Yankees. We get to this, so then this is his market potentially. The Astros to bring him back, the Kansas City Royals, who we know are not going to spend big time money, the Toronto Blue Jays, who are probably unlikely to spend big, make a big splash, the Washington Nationals, who will have the Patrick Corbin coming off the contract, and they may look at Bregman as a playoff veteran guy that could lead that clubhouse of Cruz and Wood and then all the other guys that are coming up.
And they got rid of Wink.
You've got Washington, and then you've got I think Cincinnati could be in play, but I don't think Cincinnati's going to spend big money. So, but look at the teams that we're talking about.
So many infielders.
They do, but nothing worked this year, right? They don't know. Spencer Steer, 2 years ago, if you said a bad word about Spencer Steer, the fan base would come at you with pitchforks and flaming torches. This year, I think there's probably a mob looking for Spencer Steer in Cincinnati because he's really struggled this year. So there was all of this. Noelvi Marte might be terrible. They may look at Bregman as the upgrade, the certainty and the upgrade. But is there money? But at the end of the day, what are we talking about here? We're talking about Cincinnati, Kansas City, Washington, Toronto, and his team, Houston. So there's a chance that he ends up back there because the best offer he gets is from the Astros, because you can't have New York, you can't have the Dodgers. It's just not.
At the same time, of those teams, who really needs a third baseman? There's only 2 that are guaranteed free agents. The other 2 have club options. So it's like there's very slim pickings. That's kind of the argument against that. It's just what teams absolutely need a third baseman, and I think that's where Bleacher Report came in, because Rojas is not working at third, and we need a third baseman. Second base was a disaster. Everything the Mariners did was a disaster. So I can see why they put him number 1, but the fan base correlation doesn't make any sense at all. Because if anything, the Astros are the biggest rivals to the Mariners. There's no other team that is hated more by the Mariners fan base.
You know what you do? I've got it. It. Emerson Hancock to the Cincinnati Reds, and the Cincinnati Reds send you either Christian Encarnacion Strand, Spencer Steer, or Noelvi Marte. Pick one of those, and maybe you need one more prospect to make the Marte thing work. But if you take a starting pitcher on your club that's kind of on the outside looking in, send it to a team that kind of needs a pitcher, like the Cincinnati Reds, and you get your third baseman that way. I don't think Seattle's going to want to spend the money on Bregman either. I think Seattle is one of those teams that is also very financially
20 mil.
conservative. Yeah, it's not going to happen. So you're going to take the best play for Seattle. I think is to take one of those the extra starting pitching, go into that wealth of talent, and turn that into your third baseman. I think that might be the play.
I would be on board if Noel V. Marte wasn't already traded from the Mariners to the Reds, getting suspended for PEDs and all that drama, and then Encarnacion Strand being injured most of this season,
Yep.
and that being a risk, because if they come to Seattle, it's going to happen again. He's just going to break an arm somehow. So it's a possibility. I'm not sure. But I mean, obviously there's so many topics we haven't got to, and I know you got to get going. I guess,
let's go. Let's go for another like 5 to 10 minutes. Let's go a few minutes over.
Okay. Well, we'll kind of run through these really quick. Mariners done. Are they out? I last night's game, it's the second time in 5 games that they've blown a lead of 4 or more runs and lost it in do or die situation. At this point, I think they need to win every single game, and the Twins or the Royals need to lose at least 4 of their next 6.
Yeah.
If possible in the 4 of the next 6, but winning all 6 for the Mariners, I don't have the faith.
I will. I think you might. So what's the gap with Kansas City? Is it a game and a half?
It's I have it right here. So it was right now. So the Tigers and Royals are tied for that 2nd and 3rd seed, and then the Twins are 2 games back. Mariners are 2.5 games back.
It's 2.5 now.
It's 2.5 now because we lost to the Astros and they clinched the division, and then Baltimore clinched the wild card number 1 seed.
Yeah, 2.5. Okay, right. Because you had the Kansas City win and the Seattle loss last night.
Yeah.
2.5. Yeah, I hate to say it.
I think it's over too.
I think it's over. Kansas City's got 2 more games against Washington, and even though they struggle to scratch runs across again, they've scored like the Kansas City Royals have scored, I think, 11 runs in the last 10 days. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, they've lost 7 of their last 10, and yeah, they're really really bad right now. But so are the Twins.
They are, but the Twins are almost irrelevant. The Twins are relevant in the fact that they're in your way still. They're a half game ahead of Seattle, but with this being another game against Houston, and now the 3 games against Oakland, that's good. You know, I can see Seattle sweeping Oakland.
They're always a pain.
They are. Yes, they are.
And now, and another incentive right now that I'm concerned about is this is it for Oakland. Like, not the season.
Yeah,
this
Oakland,
is it
Oakland, right.
for Oakland. So they're like, we're going out like we've never played before. Yeah. And every season, I think I might be wrong in this, someone's going to fact check me, but the last 3 or 4 seasons, they've won the series, and they're always the last team we play.
Yeah.
So...
yeah, I hate to say it. Because I want to see playoff Randy. I want to see playoff Randy. I would love to see what your pitching staff could do in a short series.
But, if Castillo comes back.
Yeah. This is even without Castillo. You throw Miller, Kirby, and Gilbert out there. That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah, Kirby's been scaring me.
This should be a message to that front office. That, I mean, you hoped that the Randy Arozarena thing was going to be enough. It's not. Keep pushing. I think they have to turn one of the pitchers, and I don't know. I think you keep Miller or Wu.
Ugh.
Well, yeah, I know, but Miller or Wu. I think one of them has to be traded for an impact bat, and maybe it's how you get Luis Robert away from the Chicago White Sox. Because
I think Castillo. I think they're going to do money.
Castillo. Yes. If you could deal Castillo, well, that would be so. If you're dealing Castillo, you're probably not getting a deal done with the White Sox because the White Sox are going to be looking to get rid of the Luis Robert money. They won't want to take on the Castillo money, unless they think they can then flip Castillo. So you would be looking at dealing Luis Castillo to another team that is okay with taking on money and needs the starting pitching. And who would
and
that be?
has an infield offensive bat.
Maybe
Outfield, I'm content. I'm content with outfield. Really, we have plenty. In fact, we need to get rid of Haniger.
I wonder if you could do a deal with the. I wonder if you could do a deal with the Orioles, because the Orioles are going to need a pitcher because Burns is gone.
And that, honestly, that's kind of where the Orioles or the Reds, because of that surplus of infielders that are available. That's where I see that working. Given it,
maybe Texas. Well, you can't do a division. I can't do a division trade because Texas is going to have they're losing Scherzer, they're losing Evaldi, they're going to be down. Who else could we do here? Obviously, we got to scratch the division.
Well, they lost a lot this last offseason, and that really, obviously, that took a huge toll.
Yeah.
Plus injuries like Seager. But speaking of injuries, I'm going to move forward because I know you have limited time.
Yeah.
This news, Lindor's back today. Saw that come up.
I guess the question is how long is he going to be back for? Because he came back and then he went right back down. But it hasn't. Yeah. I mean, they need to pick me up for this Atlanta series. They didn't They didn't need him against Philly. They took 3 out of 4. They could use pick me up against Atlanta. That's great. I mean, news is it. Well, I feel like as it is, this Mets team has enough to get at least one of these games. And with how Arizona's falling apart, even just getting one of the games, it could be enough because Milwaukee's not going to really need to do anything on the final Sunday. That should be a gimme win. If you get one of these wins here, one of the next 2, so Atlanta gets ahead of you and Atlanta gets the number 5 wild card. Okay. But then if you can get one of the other games against Milwaukee, if the New York Mets can win 3 games the rest of the way, with how Arizona's playing, the Mets, I think, are still good to get in my opinion.
They're still good. Yeah. It's like a dogfight right now. I mean, half game back for the Braves. I mean, that whole wild card's up for debate, except for the Padres. Except for my Padres. I'm cool with that.
They're in.
Yeah.
You figure the Diamondbacks have the half game over Atlanta. There's just no juice with the Diamondbacks right now. It doesn't feel good.
Unless Eugenio Suarez can wake up again and Christian Walker starts hitting bombs. Perdomo's been decent. But Gurriel's been out, and he's kind of back and forth in and out of the lineup.
Yeah. See, this is the time of year. This is the time of year where, and I think this is why pitching always wins out, is because, I mean, I hate to put it this way, but pitching's easier to control. And what I mean by that is, if a hitter gets in a slump, I believe it's harder for a hitter to get out of a slump than a pitcher. If a pitcher has a bad start, he can put it behind him and he can get right back at it. As long as he's repeating his delivery and his mechanics are fine and you're not seeing this big drop off in velocity or anything like that. As long as the pitcher's not hurt and he can get back in and his delivery and everything, his mechanics are fine, then a pitcher can bounce back the next game. A hitter could go for a whole week. And if if certain Diamondbacks bats go down for a whole week,
done.
What are you going to do? Yeah, you're done.
And I mean, you probably saw my very long video about my predictions and why. I try to be justifiable in my reasoning, but I said the Diamondbacks were out, but I thought they would be. I mean, they had a much better lead in the wild card because of their pitching, because it's been so choppy. And I mean, that also rolls over with the Braves. I mean, would it have mattered if they had Strider and Acuna? I mean, with how poorly the rest of the team was playing this rest of the season.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I think so. I think it would have, because that wouldn't have made Riley and Olsen's power drop mean as much as it did. It wouldn't have made Sean Murphy's a mess. It would not have made that would not have made those deficiencies that big of a deal if Acuna was doing his thing and Strider was still doing his thing. So I do think it would be worth, I think, probably 5 or 6 wins. And if that was the case, the Atlanta
they're
Braves
in.
would be sitting there with 91 and they're trying to catch the Phillies for the division. So
Yeah.
I do think it would have made a difference.
And debating on when those wins occurred, it could have been against Philadelphia, and they actually have the first seed. They have the division.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
that makes complete sense. And then, I mean, moving into the, I mean, after the wild card series, depending on who gets it, I mean, it's up in the air. Who do you think is the biggest threat to the Dodgers?
Well, I think the Padres are a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked to Doug McCain. He's and publicly on my podcast, he said that the Padres. I think the way he worded it was, if I were to tell you that I wouldn't be worried about the Padres in a short series, I'd be lying. It was something to that effect. So, and the Padres are hot right now. They have
way to get into the postseason, clinch it on a triple play.
Triple play to end the game. It's crazy. So the Padres are a problem. The Phillies certainly could be a problem. I don't think Milwaukee. I hate to say it, Milwaukee, but I don't see it there in Milwaukee. I don't think the Mets. I don't think the Diamondbacks. I don't think the Braves. I guess the two teams that I would say could be the biggest threat to the Dodgers in the National League would be Philadelphia and San Diego.
And I think Philadelphia would be able to take them out.
Yeah, me too.
Like I mentioned,
be a great series.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing this season. I mean, I did the research on it. The Phillies have scored 37 runs against the Dodgers this season, and the Dodgers have only scored 16 against them.
Yeah.
I mean, history repeats itself. It really does. And
well, if I remember right, the Phillies played the Dodgers, and the Dodgers did not have Mookie or Muncy. So that's the only difficult part about going back and looking at the Dodgers, because you have to line it up, because Muncy missed so much time and Mookie missed a ton of time, and Freddie was out for a stretch there dealing with some personal stuff. They have had and their pitching did not having Yamamoto. It's been such a difficult. It's hard to go back and get a read on. Okay, the Dodgers team we played 2 months ago. Is that the same team we're going to be playing in October? And it's probably not, because of all the injuries.
Pitching-wise, I think it flip-flopped. You have Glasnow's out.
But Yamamoto's back. Yamamoto's back. Flaherty's...
But Knack's been terrible. Miller's been terrible.
Yep.
Grove, I haven't seen him.
You're going to rely on, if you're the Dodgers, you're going to be relying on Yamamoto and Flaherty. That's it. That's and you're gonna keep your fingers crossed that somebody else gives you something good.
Or they'd pull the Tigers and they do an opener. They just roll the bullpen every 2 innings, new arm, and it's worked for the Tigers.
Yep.
So I don't see why not. This is just more of a fun one.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can get this on here. So Jose Altuve, it happened a few days ago. It's just kind of a thing I want to throw out there. So Jose Altuve took off his shoe, showed it to the umpires, gets ejected because he's saying he fouled the ball off his foot, and they said it was in play. This is not the first time he's done this. Like, he's fouled off his foot and then argued it. And this is the clip before.
Yeah.
And he did the same thing, got ejected, got all angry. But the funny thing is that I read into an article and I was thinking about this. He has had, I think, 2 walk-offs, at least in the last couple of years, if not this year. And he refuses to let anybody take his shirt off. Do not derobe him, but he'll go out of his way to take his own shoe off to show the umpire where he got hit. So I don't know. I was just curious what you thought. This is also a Mariners fan just getting, like, what the hell? Like, why are you getting so pissy about this?
Yeah.
But it's like, pick one. If you're going to take your shoe off, take your shirt off.
Well, I don't understand how you expect how is there going to be any evidence that you took a foul ball off your foot? like you have a sock, you have a shoe, you have layers, you have padding where you hope that your toe is red. Your
Yeah,
toes can be
yeah.
red. Your toes can be red from having your shoes jammed in the cleats.
Eh,
There's nothing we can do there, and that's. I mean, it
It's not
really.
reviewable, right?
It's the. Well, they can review if they feel like you're hit by a. If they feel like you're hit, they can review foul balls. They can review foul
Yeah.
tips and they can review hit. Um, I think that it's just I don't know, man. He just gets uh and I'll just leave it in this situation. He got too
Play it safe.
upset. He got yeah. I don't want to go too deep with this. It's just a total overreaction. You're a star in the league. You need
Mhm.
to, I think, carry yourself in that manner. And if the call doesn't go your way, look, you can complain, you can get thrown out of a game, but taking your shoe off and trying to show the like to have for the oddity of it,
Mhm.
just man, like complain, ask for the replay. If you don't get it, just move on. Don't start taking your clothes off and try to say, look at my foot. Look at this thing. You're telling me that this wasn't just hit. Um,
You see this toe?
yeah, look at this toe. That's not a normal
Look at
looking toe. Yeah,
Smell it. Smell
yeah,
it.
yeah. You can smell the.
It's,
You can
it
smell
smells like
this.
baseball.
Right, exactly. You can smell the. You can smell the
Um,
rawhide.
so I know you got to go. Two real quick things. MVP race. I'm a big Bobby Witt fan, and I have a big argument when it comes to just having the most home runs. Of course, it comes probably with most RBIs and runs batted in or whatever, that kind of stat. But when you couple everything defensively, you couple speed on the bases,
Yeah.
what opportunities you put your team in to score runs. My ultimate thing when it comes to MVP, typically in my mind, is the like the team you're playing for, how far they make it in the playoffs. That really dictates who's going to win the MVP. And looking as the Royals are turning into the White Sox rapidly, it seems.
Yeah.
What do you take? Do you think Judge, even though he had his major slump where 15 games he was batting 200 and he kind of brought it back the last week or so,
Yeah.
do you think he's still worthy of that number one seed? And then quietly behind him and behind Bobby Witt and behind Soto every year, and this year's more intense, is Jose Ramirez, who's about to hit 40-40 and nobody is talking about it.
Right. Well, I think that Judge has to answer the question about Judge and the MVP. I think he's got it. Bobby Witt, if Bobby Witt's been good, but he has not been grab the headlines good. And he did have that earlier in the year where he was just on fire, but he's kind of slowed down in his own right. But Judge had such a lead in the theoretical MVP race. He had such a lead that Bobby Witt Jr. during this time needed to have all of those headline grabbing moments. Bobby Witt is single-handedly leading the Royals into the postseason. Bobby Witt went 4 for 4 last night with 2 home runs. We needed to have that kind of stuff.
At least
And
more often.
there needed to be more of that during this time, because this was the window when Judge opened up for Witt to get back, but Witt did not capitalize on it. So I think
I would
it's
say
still
his
Judge.
consistency though in those time frames, he
Better.
didn't really.
It was
I mean,
better, but
besides
he
this
needed.
last week, but
You're right,
he's
but
been consistent.
think about the voting. It's done on emotion. It's done on
Yeah,
personal bias because it's people. It's people
I also
voting.
think pinstripes get you more points
It's
personally.
it certainly does. I mean, he's going to lead. I don't know how many voters think about this, but he's going to lead Major League Baseball in WAR. He is without him, the Yankees probably don't win the American League East. He's put up statistically a fantastic season. He's playing in the outfield. It's not like he's a DH. If Judge was a DH, Witt could have a real shot up until voting day. You could debate it back and forth if Judge was DHing, but Judge is playing in the field. So there's a lot that goes into the whole thought process where I think that Judge is still. And listen, I would love for Bobby Witt to be there because that was my prediction at the beginning of the year. I put money on it. I really want Bobby Witt Jr. to be the MVP, but with my own call it reputation, being that I predicted it, and my financial situation. With that in mind, I'm still saying Judge. I'm still saying it's Judge. And J Ram is having a great year as well. Unfortunately, yeah, he just if J Ram was doing what he was doing in New York or LA, it may be a different scenario.
And that's another thing. It's like, I think there might be a discussion later on, and maybe we can do this again.
Yeah.
Maybe in October, depending on where the Guardians are. If the Guardians make it to the World Series, if they're able to pull through, if they can, it's a big if. They're still pretty hot right now. They've had a couple rough games. Maybe J-Ram is someone to talk about if they are able to overcome the Yankees. And as far as financial investment, everybody on, at least on this channel, knows I'm a big card guy, and these are all Bobby Witt Topps Chrome cards for the MVP buyback. So I am financially invested as well. They're not going to be worth anything if he doesn't win, which I understand Judge probably will take it, given the fact that he did blow up again. He did come back, and he seems to be carrying this team, and now they've clinched it, and it's looking good for the Yankees. I think, you know, at least in the postseason, though, it could determine certain things.
Well, the
based
postseason
on who wins.
The postseason, they're gonna, all of the voters are gonna vote on the regular season. They won't, even though there's the personal element to it, because these are people voting for it. I haven't seen the postseason sway regular season MVP votes. I feel like they just kind of shut it down, and almost their memory bank is like blocked. There's a wall that goes up between regular season and postseason. J Ram could have a great postseason, lead Cleveland to the World Series. I still think Judge would win the World Series. Or win the MVP. And I don't see that. I don't see it swaying him.
Then last thing is Rookie of the Year. I'm not sure how to. National League side, I know right now the trends are Skeens and Merrill. I can't say Jackson because there's too many of them. And right now, based on what I'm seeing, it looks like Skeens just took ahead of Merrill, which I don't understand that, given how Jackson Merrill's been playing. I understand last night he had, I believe, a couple strikeouts. But that's just one game, and throughout the season, I mean, he has 32 home runs. I might be wrong on that. As a rookie, I mean, we're looking at numbers that were similar to J-Rod, to Bobby Witt in 22, and we're still talking about them today. And I think that's pretty damn deserving. And then Skeens, like we mentioned earlier, you didn't call it up so late. It's like, I feel like the time and service during this year really should play a factor, especially longevity and holding their own. Don't get me wrong, Skeens is amazing. I think he deserves maybe a Cy Young. Of course, that's not going to happen. Chris Sale is just killing it. But like, I don't know. I feel like if Skeens was selected, would you be mad?
No, but I don't think he's going to. I think it is going to be Jackson Merrill. I think that they give the edge to the position player. What was it? 2 years ago? It was Atlanta. It was basically between Michael Harris and Spencer Strider, and Strider was incredible that year. Harris was great too. I thought Strider was better. Harris won the award. I think that they give the edge to the position player. So put me down for Merrill, but I have seen the odds, and it was Merrill by a lot a couple of weeks ago. But Paul Skeens has had some good starts and is going to finish the year strong. So I can see how he's getting in there. It could be an attempt by the bettors or by Vegas. We'll just lump all of these gambling sites into one.
Makes sense.
Call it Vegas.
They have odds.
There's a million of them. We'll just call it Vegas. Vegas has almost in a way to rope you in, giving Paul Skeens these good odds when really the safe money is with Merrill.
That's a good point. I mean, and then what you're saying as far as pitchers versus position players, and this might be also something that is contributing to that, but the AL side right now, they have Luis Hill as the first one, but then you have Colton Cowser and Austin Wells has kind of cooled off.
Yeah.
He was doing really great, and Colton Cowser was great in the beginning, and he's kind of tapered off as well, but he's consistently decent. It's
Big
just,
home run
I don't know, I
last
guess
night.
AL side is not like screaming at me, and I'm having a hard time like picking
Yeah.
who I think was best.
No, it justifiable. So if we're basing who has been great and had a bigger impact on their team for the majority of the season, right? Let's say we're trying to fill in weeks. Who filled in a week with red, red being good, and who filled in
Mhm,
a week with blue? How
mhm.
many weeks would be red? How many weeks would be blue for Luis Heel and Colton Cowser? I think we would have more red for Luis Heel because the
Yep.
way he started, even though he's out there once every 5 or 6 days, oh, it was huge. There was no Garrett Cole. Like they didn't miss Garrett Cole because Luis Heel, you
He,
couldn't
he
touch
was
him.
Cole.
Yeah,
He was Cole.
he really was. And Cowser has had some stretches where he was really good, but
Mhm.
I believe Luis Heel was the difference maker. And I'm mad at myself for not putting more money down on Luis Heel for AL Rookie of the Year because it was like plus 8,000 or something like that at one point. It was
You know,
ridiculous.
I didn't know
He,
who he was.
even well, he came up. Was it in the 2020 or 2021 season? He came up for a minute, went back down. I wondered if we
Mhm,
were ever going to see him again. And he was absolutely incredible. But I
mhm.
knew he had. I remember him having the stuff, and I remember I'm looking at this, and I'm like, man, but it's a pitcher. I talked myself out of it because of the whole Spencer Strider, Michael Harris thing. That has left too much of an impression on me because I'm like, nah, it's the pitcher. They're going to give it to the everyday player,
That's not the
but
first time though. Yeah.
but I feel like
So it's
Hauser's just
repeating
not good
history with the
enough.
pitcher.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I like Hauser.
Me
I
too.
like Hauser a lot. I think he was instrumental when it comes to intra-divisional games. Like he was a staple in that. That's why he got some of the biggest notice when he was playing
Yeah,
in the beginning of the season, and why everybody's like, oh, like he's jumping ahead of everybody. Like he's really impressive this year. But yeah, Luis Hill, I didn't know who he was at the beginning of the season. And then I saw him do like one really good outing on my fantasy league, and I was like, I'll pick him up off the waiver. And ever since then,
right.
he was giving me like the highest numbers. I was like, oh, well, this is my active in the MLB Paul Skeens at this point because Paul Skeens wasn't up anymore. So,
Right.
um,
Colton
and
Cowser hurt the Orioles in May and June. He hurt them. He was
yeah,
playing so poorly. Like his defense is
yeah,
okay, but from a hitting perspective, he would have been a negative WAR player in May and June. He had that, and a good part of April. He had about a 2-week stretch in April that was really good. Outside of that, April was nothing to write home about. May was bad. June was bad. July was really good. August was okay. He kind of went back to like that May June version, and he's. I mean, it could come down to how he closes out the season. He had a big home run against the Yankees yesterday, and maybe it boils down to does he finish with a strong week? But to take 2 months of the season and be so bad with the bat that you're an easy out and you're hurting the team. That's a check. That's a mark against you, in my opinion.
the whole Mariners team during that time, just 10,
Right.
10 game lead, and here's 4 games ahead of us in
Mm-hmm.
2 months,
Mm-hmm.
or even that was like 30 days.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I get what you're saying, and I guess that's where I kind of argue that maybe Austin Wells is a better option than Colton Cowser because
Mm-hmm.
he was platooning, but when he finally got more everyday, you know, time behind the plate, he was he was killing it. I mean, I know he only has 13 home runs this season, but 236 average. I mean, he has an OPS of 731. I know his OPS plus is only 106, but for a position that the Yankees had like pretty much nobody with no real expectations. I mean, maybe Ben Rice, who was hot for a couple days games and they sent him back down.
Yeah.
Wells has stepped up.
I feel like Wells is almost, and I hate to say this, I feel like Wells is almost here so we have a token third person to talk about because the AL Rookie of the Year situation just did not pan out. Like if we're
It's
gonna
so
have
weak.
if we're gonna have Austin Wells in the conversation, then we need to have Wyatt Langford because Wyatt Langford, while he has not had a really rough first half of the season, But if the full body of work from 2024, I would take Wyatt Langford's production over Austin Wells's production. So
Is that a
the
name
fact,
thing though?
no,
Like Wyatt
Wyatt
was
Langford,
anticipated.
Wyatt Langford, maybe what it is Wyatt Langford didn't, because we're not. I haven't seen Wyatt Langford. I've seen Austin Wells with a more favored sort of with odds favored more for Wells than for Langford, and I think it's because of how poor Langford did earlier on in the year, maybe compared to the hype. Because Langford was supposed to show up and be that guy that was a rookie of the year favorite, and he didn't do that, and he didn't do it for such a long time. I think didn't he hit his first home run in
inside the park.
like June, and it wasn't it in June or something like that. Yeah, it was an inside the park job. So, but my point
He's
is
got the same amount of home runs too, and a lower batting average. Hold on, did I get that right?
I think for compared to Wells,
Oh, they're
compared
about
to
the
Jackson,
same.
he's got to be higher. Yeah,
Yeah, he's higher, 251.
Langford's numbers are a little bit better than Wells. So
Yeah.
Wells talk is happening because he's in New York, and
That was another thing. Pinstripes.
and because we are again looking for a third, because really this is just a Luis Heel Colton Cowser conversation.
Yeah.
But let's grab somebody else, and let's grab Austin Wells, because Wells has been good enough and he's in New York. But if we're going to have Wells in the conversation, we should have Langford in the conversation. And really, we're only talking about the third place voting at this point, because it's going to come down to Heel or Cowser.
Yeah, it was June 3rd is when he started picking it up, because he ended May at 222 batting average, a 286 slugging. This is Wyatt Langford. And then June 3rd, he started boosting it up. He got up to 260 batting average by the end of June with 390 slug. And his OPS finally hit over 700. And then throughout July, it just kept kind of fluctuating between 260, 270. And then towards the end, it was like 247. But he's right around the 700 mark as far as his OPS goes. Mm-hmm. Pretty much the entire year until September hit, and then he kind of blew up, and that's where we are talking about him. And that's ironically where Wells kind of
fell off.
Yeah. He's kind of disappeared, and I guess Trevino's been filling in for him recently. But Hill, I guess, I mean, it's a gimme, almost. Like, he did great in the beginning of the season. He's been he's had his off and on towards the end of the season, but man, if this was the year to be a rookie in the AL, if you were going to have a good year, this would have been the time to take it. And I mean, maybe Horwitz, as we circle back to the beginning, if he started in the very beginning of the season, would he have qualified?
He would probably be a top 5 vote. He would probably be a top 5 vote getter if he had started the year and got regular playing time.
Yeah, if he started at the beginning of the season and he put up the numbers throughout, not just, a couple months and had a rough start, but if he was able to produce what he's been producing, I could see him being the number one easily. And I don't know. We'll see in the offseason where he ends up. If he's going to be a starter.
If he had carried, he's got an OPS of 801 right now, which is, I don't have the OPS plus number, but I know it's a plus number. It's probably like it's an OPS plus of like 110 or something, 115 maybe. So the numbers, and this is he's sort of cooled off lately. If you had given him a full season of this kind of performance, he would be easily a top. Again, he wouldn't be 1 or 2, because that would still be Cowser and Heel, but he would be in that conversation for who's our third best rookie of the year guy. Is it Wells? Is it Langford? Is it Horwitz? But and as it is,
128 OPS plus.
128. As it is, you could probably argue for Spencer Horwitz to be there with Langford and Wells. As it is, with his OPS and the numbers he has given you in the 300 or so at bats, I think that there's probably already a case.
268 batting average, 1.3 WAR for half a season. June 3rd is when he jumped in. Like, I'm on board. So, but I mean,
Yep.
that's all I have for you, man. Thank you so much for joining me today
Yeah.
on this. This is the first
Fun.
of many, hopefully. And maybe we can. We went way over time, so I thank you for sticking around. And
Yep.
then if we can do it again, we'll do it again. Maybe sometime in October when we see a little bit more clarity of who's where and what's going on.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
I,
if you get me in October during the day again like this one, that should be good. I have a feeling most of my October nights are going to be streaming, doing post games of all these games.
perfect.
So during the day, maybe when things are building up and we're building towards like the LCS and we're getting down to like the MLB version of the Final Four. Let's get back
Yeah,
together.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that'd be great. So,
Cool.
thanks again. Thank you guys for joining us on this awesome podcast we finally put together, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Later.